Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ditch the Diets, an online summit for helping women break free from diet hell so they can finally lose the weight for good without all the mind drama. I'm your host, Danielle Emmons. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, and it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Nina Savelle-Rocklin. And welcome, Dr. Nina. Thank you so much for coming on.
I am so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm glad you're here. Dr. Nina is a psychoanalyst, author, and radio host specializing in eating disorders with an emphasis on binge eating disorder. Internationally recognized for her unique perspective in the field of eating psychology, she is the author of The Binge Cure: 7 Steps to Outsmart Emotional Eating and Food for Thought, Perspectives on Eating Disorders, and co-editor of Beyond the Primal Addiction. Her YouTube series, Break Free from Binging, helps viewers lose weight without counting calories, carbs, or fat grams. She also hosts the Dr. Nina Show radio program on LA Talk Radio, which is actually a podcast, right?
It's made into a podcast. So it's live every Wednesday at 11 Pacific. And then it's made into a podcast that you can get on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get your podcasts.
Awesome. Yes. I've listened to it and it's amazing. It's amazing. So, well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So first, I would love to start off by just having you share your story, your personal struggles, and the journey of how you got to just where you are today.
I would love to start to share that story, which really begins when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
And I seemingly randomly, and I figured it out later, why I seemingly randomly looked at my legs and decided they were fat.
Wow.
And decided I was fat and that I should somehow lose weight. And by the way, my parents were like hippie college professors. We didn't watch TV. There were no magazines in the house. There was no media anywhere that would make me compare my body to someone else's. Plus, I was 5. This began 5 years old. Yeah. But this began my descent into really eating disorder hell, which by the time I was an adolescent and then a teenager, I was in this cycle of eating disorders. I would restrict, and then I would binge, and then binge and purge. And this cycle just would go on for years. And every page of every journal of my diaries of that time, every page was filled with numbers. And I would write, what I was going to eat, what I hadn't eaten, how many calories I'd burned, would I lose weight the next day or would I not?
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I feeling like the poster child for eating disorders this whole time. And I thought it was hopeless. I couldn't imagine a time when I wasn't thinking about what I was going to eat or not eat. And so finally in college, I went to therapy, but I went for anxiety. I did not want to talk to my therapist about my being the poster child for eating disorders because, first of all, I was too embarrassed. Mm-hmm. Secondly, when I was restricting, I felt very powerful, which is just, horrible now, but I didn't want to give it up. I liked that feeling of being powerful, like, I cannot eat. Aren't I wonderful? I mean, it's so sad to look back on it, but that's the truth of how it was. Mm-hmm. So I went for anxiety and I talked about everything but food. I talked about fears about the future, guy problems, stuff with my parents, friend things, everything in the world except what was going on with food. And by the time I left therapy, all my eating disorders were gone.
Wow.
And people say, wow, like you just did. Wow. How do you get rid of all your eating disorder behaviors that were there for years and years and years without ever talking about food? And that's because what I learned was food was not the problem. Food was the solution to the problem, whether I was turning away from it or to it or, to it and from it. Mm-hmm. It was the solution to something that was going on inside. And the real problem was my toxic relationship with myself that I wasn't nice to myself. I was a slave driver. I was mean to myself. I had no patience with myself. And really, all of this eating disorder behavior was a way of expressing it and distracting from it.
Mhm.
And so that's when I realized, oh, it's not what I thought it was. Now, why did I think that I was overweight at the age of 5
Mhm.
when I wasn't?
Right.
Um, I was, like I said, my parents were college professors and they were very academic and they were very low key and very studious and very quiet. And I was like, ah, let's do this and let's do that. And I was constantly being told, like, calm down, be quiet, you're too loud, you're too much, is basically the message that I got.
Mhm.
And so my 5-year-old mind went, oh, I am too much. There's too much of me.
Right.
And that's when I, like, unconsciously decided that I would make myself less. And that really is what points to the power of your mind in terms of weight loss and getting healthy and all of those things. It's really so much more about what's going on inside than what you're eating. It's why you're eating.
Right, right. Exactly. And so is that like why you decided to become a psychoanalyst?
List. Yeah, yeah. I became, so first I became a therapist, and
Mhm.
I worked at an eating disorder program. And I noticed that it was always like the focus was on, well, what did people weigh and how much did they eat and how much did they not eat? And I just felt like there was something deeper that was being missed. So
Mhm.
it'd be like you have these people would be told, oh, you have these ideas, these mistaken beliefs about yourself. So let's change those beliefs.
Right.
But where did those beliefs come from in the first place? And so that led me to become a psychoanalyst, which really looks at the unconscious, the hidden reasons for why people do what they do. Because if you're doing something you don't want to do, or you're not doing something you want to do, it's not about willpower. It's not about control. It's not about being lazy. It's about some motivational force within you, our
Mhm.
unconscious mind, that has everything to do with those choices. And I wanted to investigate that and really help people recognize that there are hidden reasons that they are turning to food, and once you deal with those hidden reasons, then they're gone. The way I put it, the way I describe the unconscious is, you can't fight an invisible army.
Right.
You just get beaten up. But when you make the army visible, then you can fight, then you can fight back, then you can win.
Mhm. Yeah, that is really, I mean, that's empowering right there because I think so many people think they have to control so much. Like I have to control my diet. I need willpower. I need more, like I hear it all the time. Like I need willpower. I need this. I need that. And so it's not really about that. And I am like I said, I'm a dietitian, so I'm about nutrition. But I truly believe there is so much more beyond that. And I've learned that as I've worked with my own clients, that it's so much more mindset and just, you know, like a root cause to the problem.
Exactly. And that's why I like that root weed analogy. If you just pick a weed, it's going to grow back. And that's what a diet is. You just go
Right.
a weight loss diet. It grows back. You go on another diet. You got to get to those roots, which are hidden out of sight. We don't see them, just like the unconscious. We don't know it, but it has an effect on what we do. We don't see a root, but it grows the weed. So, and once you deal with all that, then often people have no idea what to eat. And that's when a dietitian can be so crucial and necessary, because they've spent their whole lives being on diets. They don't know how to eat.
Right. Exactly. And so how do you work with people that so you can find that root cause that you can find like the deeper meaning of why they're struggling so much so that they can be free of that.
Well, I help them figure out the why. And sometimes people are so quick. they're so quick to go to food that they don't even realize that they're being triggered.
Mhm.
Um, I tell the story in my book about Jenna, who thought she was a food addict.
Mhm.
And as proof of this, she said that she had been watching TV, had a good day watching TV, nothing was bothering her, there was nothing emotional. And all of a sudden, Ben and Jerry's was calling her name.
Yeah.
So-
I
And
read your book, so I remember this
yeah,
one.
yeah. And the way she put the way, let me bring it to life. She's like,
Yeah.
calling my name. I'm addicted to Chunky Monkey. Like she was, she, I mean, she was just, she just, I'm a food addict. I'm addicted to Chunky Monkey. So I asked her what she was watching, and she said it was her favorite guilty pleasure, Charmed. So she was happy. She's watching her favorite show, and clearly she's addicted to ice cream. So
Yeah.
then I asked what the episode had been about. And she said, well, it's when the devil comes down and the sisters start fighting and everything gets really nasty and awful. And that's when she stopped. She looked at me, I looked at her, and we both knew that watching that show had activated her own conflict with her sister
Mhm.
and turning to ice cream. So she before that could reach conscious awareness, she went to ice cream to comfort herself.
Mhm.
So Ben and Jerry's Chunky Monkey was the solution to the problem. The real problem was her inability to work through and process and even identify in that moment that she was triggered by her sister, her own issues with her sister. And so if we had just talked about, well, the next time Chunky Monkey starts calling your name,
Right.
go brush your teeth, it doesn't solve the problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's, well, what's going on inside? And that's how I develop my food mood formula that I talk about in my book, which is, what do you do when you don't have me to say, well, what was that all about? Let's discern your unconscious motivation. Because I noticed that certain triggers make people go to certain foods. They think they're being triggered by food, but really they're being triggered by a situation, and they're going to food to resolve it in a way,
Right.
because food
Yeah.
is a frenemy. It is a friend, it does something for you, and it is an enemy. So in the case of Jenna, ice cream and anything smooth and creamy, if that's what you're going towards, then you got to ask yourself, oh, that's related to comfort. So how else can you comfort yourself? That means you need comfort even if you don't know why. How do you comfort yourself? How do you comfort your kids? How do you comfort your best friend? How do you comfort someone you love? You
Mhm.
don't give them ice cream. Or
Right.
if you do, maybe you need it to find a whole new way of comforting others too.
Right.
But that's a sign of comfort. Or um, anything with a crunch. People will say, I ate the entire family size bag of tortilla chips, and
Mhm.
now I'm mad at myself. Well, anything with a crunch is a sign that you have some anger that perhaps you are expressing with something crunchy, and
Right.
you want to look at, well, who or what is causing you anger, frustration, irritation, so many forms of anger, and find a way to be with that anger, express it so that you don't eat it and then get mad at yourself.
Right.
And the last category is um, filling bulky foods, which it's associated with filling a void or loneliness. And
Mhm.
when we're lonely or there's something missing in our life, we feel like we feel a hole within ourselves.
Right.
And food can symbolically fill that space. And
Yeah.
so if that's your go-to, then you got to look at, well, what's missing in your life?
Mhm.
And also people use those kinds of food to sedate themselves, but for the kind of calm them down. But for the purposes of this, it's okay, what's missing? What's the void in your life?
Right.
And how can you set about filling it?
Yeah. And so how do you distinguish between like it's actually something that you need to focus on that's like you said, like crunchy might be anger, more filling foods like bread and pizza and things like that is more maybe uh comfort. Is that right? Or
Filling the void. And then
filling a void
yeah.
versus like I just want that food. Like how do you determine which is which?
Well, That is a great question, and here's how you determine it. If you're just having ice cream for dessert, that's not what the food mood formula is about.
Mhm,
The food mood formula is when you think you're going to change how you feel.
mhm.
Oh, if I eat that, I'm going to feel better emotionally. Or when you have that sudden, like Jenna did, I just got to have it,
Yeah,
and that pull towards it, which is sort of misery, you
right,
know, when you feel like it's about willpower, as opposed to you're having pizza for dinner and you're having chips with your sandwich and you're eating ice cream or something, for dessert. That's not what this is about. This is about when you're really changing the way you emotionally feel, um or just suddenly feel that I gotta have it. That
right.
means
Like
something emotionally
feeling some sort of void, like is totally different than just, "Oh, I'm just gonna have chips because I just feel like having chips and I'm not gonna feel guilty about it."
right, right.
Yeah,
And there's nothing wrong with eating chips or ice cream or pizza,
sure.
but there's something that's just this part of eating, right?
Right,
All foods, there's no good food, no bad food. It's just be healthy, be moderate, but it's hard to do that if you're using food to resolve your emotional wounds.
right, yeah, which a lot of people do, and I don't think they realize it, and so I think what you do is amazing because then it opens up that, you know, it opens up to them that like, "Okay, maybe I'm doing this for a reason, and maybe I can change that." And and find a way to enjoy those foods without all of those extra, like, I have to fill a void, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So in your opinion, like, why do you think diets fail?
Ugh, so many
Loaded
reasons.
question.
Well, I mean, obviously diets fail on a physiological level, because they are about they're depriving your metabolism, slows, all of that stuff happens, your metabolism gets more efficient, and then you need fewer calories to keep your body going, and then when you eat normally again you gain weight again. Like there's so many physiological
Yeah.
reasons, and stress and cortisol and all of that, but from my perspective, which is the psychology of eating,
Mhm.
diets focus on what you are eating, not why. So they don't deal with the true underlying reasons that you're turning to food. And
Mhm.
therefore they keep you from you. And they're always about deprivation.
Mhm.
And either the experience of deprivation or the anticipation of deprivation makes you want something more. And that's that last supper thing that happens, like, I'm going to go on a diet on Monday. So
Right.
Sunday night is the last supper and eating everything that you're not going to eat until you lose that 10, 20, 50, 100 pounds. And of course, you know, that last supper thing makes people gain weight all the time. And then,
Exactly.
and then it's not sustainable to be on a diet. It's just not.
Mm-mm.
And so eventually, you go off the diet, and we have a $60 billion diet industry that is dedicated to as many people dieting as possible.
I know, which is so sad. It's so sad. It's so frustrating because I mean, if like, correct me if I'm wrong, but they really feel like, oh, I went on this diet, I went on keto, I went on Whole 30, I went on whatever it is, and oh, I failed because I didn't follow through. But no, I mean, in my opinion, the diets failed them because they're not realistic, they're not sustainable, and they can't
Absolutely.
do that forever.
98% of diets fail.
Hmm.
and and probably the 2% of people who go on a diet and do well afterwards didn't deal with emotional eating or
Yeah.
something like that, right? That
Mhm.
they just, maybe they just didn't have the nutritional knowledge, and they got some knowledge and now they eat in a healthy way and they keep their weight off and done.
Sure.
But yeah, diets always fail people, and they keep you from you.
Yeah.
They keep you from really understanding you, that if you're turning to food, there's something going on within you. But we live in a culture that says don't feel anything but good,
Yeah.
right? If you're angry, you're an angry person and you need anger management class. If you're sad, you must be depressed. Yeah,
Mhm.
some people are depressed, And some people are just sad because things happen. They're sad. My
Right.
friend Kelly just had to put her dog to sleep. She's sad.
Sure.
And people get anxious, and our culture says, don't feel that. Here's why you shouldn't feel that. And then what do you do with your feelings?
Right. You stuff
You
them.
stuff them. And then you take your feelings out on yourself, because I've
Yeah.
met many people who say, oh, I'm not an angry person. I would never get mad at anyone else. I would never be upset with anybody. That would be terrible. I
Mhm.
hate myself because, and then all that anger just that they can't feel towards anyone else or any situation just gets put on them. And they
Right.
have no problem taking it out on themselves,
Right.
which is not good.
No. But they give grace to like everybody else, but not never themselves. And that's, I mean, that's so, it's so hard. It's so hard. And I mean, we probably most people do that. And so it's like, sometimes I say to like my clients, like, what would you tell your friend? Like, what would you tell your kid? Would you tell them like, oh, like you're horrible. Like, how could you have had that donut or a piece of pizza? Like, would you ever say that to them? No, you never would. But we will always say it to ourselves and then feel bad about it and guilty and all the horrible feelings.
Which then makes you feel bad, which
Yeah.
makes you turn to food again.
Right.
Because if you feel thoughts and beliefs lead to feelings, lead to behavior.
Yeah.
And and if you're being mean to yourself and cruel to yourself and calling yourself all kinds of names, you feel bad, which leads to you using food to feel better. But
Right.
if you're nice to yourself, you feel good. End of story.
Exactly. And so, working with clients, like how do you get them to change that mindset?
Well, one way is that I see this in a lot of people is they talk to, as you just said, they talk to themselves in a very different way from the way that they talk to other people.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I see is that they use the second person language um, when they talk to themselves. For example, one of my patients, I think I even talk about it in the book. But it's such a perfect example because in one sentence she said, I went to the party and I just told myself, no, I go to the party. I was going to just eat everything that I wanted. I wasn't going to worry about depriving myself. I was just going to eat, give myself permission to just
Mhm.
try everything if I wanted to. And then I did. And then afterwards I was driving home and I thought to myself, here's where it's shifted. You, you have no willpower. You totally lost control. You're disgusting. No one is ever going to love you. You're gross. You. And
Right.
so I said, please say that again. But instead of saying you're disgusting, I want you to say I'm disgusting. And she couldn't do it because it felt too mean. So
Mhm.
often just a really small semantic change
Yeah.
from you to I, because it's easy to say to yourself, you suck. It's
Yeah.
harder to say, I suck. Just it's harder to say it.
Right. That's true.
And
That's
to,
true.
yeah. And so to really watch the language and the way that you talk to yourself and also the tone.
Mhm.
Someone else said she tried this. She came to me and she said, well, I tried what you said. I tried talking to myself and it didn't work.
Mhm.
I asked her what she had said. And I said, please repeat exactly how you said it.
Right.
She said, this is what I told myself. I told myself it's going to be okay. It's fine. I said, oh, well, I can't believe that didn't work. Like, would you say that to anybody else? It's going to be okay. It's fine. Come on. You can you can say the same words. It's going to be okay. It's fine. It's going to be okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
And that has a totally different meaning. So really watch the way you talk to yourself
Mhm.
and the way that you relate to yourself. And that changes everything. That's what I had to learn in my time with my therapist. And that's how I got rid of all my eating disorders, by really shifting the way that I responded to myself. Like, so responding instead of reacting by going, what's
Yeah.
in the fridge?
Right. Exactly. And it's amazing that you like, you never talk to your therapist about food. You never talk to your therapist about any of that. It's just changing the way you talk to yourself. makes it such a big difference.
Because
And
that's the root.
yeah, that's huge, and so, and that's not what the whole diet industry is about. It's just like count calories, count macros, count, you know, it's just, it doesn't work forever. It's not, you can't live by willpower. You really have to get to the root.
And amen. You speak my language. Absolutely. And then the other thing about the diet culture is that it sells this idea that if you lose weight, you will be somehow a better, different person.
Right.
If you're shy and you lose weight, you'll become confident.
Mhm.
If you'll lose the parts of yourself that you don't like, and then you'll just become different. You'll be a different person. And the reality is, when you lose weight, you only lose weight. You just change the number on the scale, or the number of the jeans that you in the jeans that you wear. You
Right.
don't change who you are. People say all the time, "Well, I'm going to be. I know I'll be more confident." Yeah, maybe for a little bit,
Hmm.
but then you're just going to feel like you.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important to to recognize, like, what is it you're really trying to lose? Is
No.
it just weight, or is there something you think you're going to lose weight, you're going to lose by losing weight?
Right. Exactly. It doesn't change like how you feel inside. You may, like, the number in the scale may be different. You might fit in your clothes better. Maybe have a little more confidence, but there's always that feeling inside that doesn't change unless you work on that. So I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why you are so important. What you do is so important. Um, so, what do you think are like some steps people can take to create change?
Well, one is to watch the language of the you and the I and the tone and all of that. Um, I also think that people should throw out their scales.
I
The
agree. 100%.
That piece of metal and plastic cannot measure your true value.
No.
And if you're relying on that scale to make you feel good about yourself because the number went down, that's not okay. And if you get on the scale and it goes higher, because naturally we fluctuate, and your day is ruined because of what that number is, and then you feel bad, and then you're going to make yourself better by eating, go
Yeah.
into that vicious cycle. This Your self-esteem should not be based on what that scale says. And when you really make changes, and this is so important, when you really make these changes within yourself and the way that you relate with yourself, um, like you said that you tell your clients, would you say that to a friend? I also say, hey, would you like your friends better if they lost 10 or 20 pounds or
Yeah.
100 pounds? Like, would you suddenly be like, well, I liked her, okay, but now that she's lost weight,
Hmm.
she's awesome. No, of course not. So find a new measure of your self-regard and your self-esteem. And when you do that, then you respond differently to yourself. You're going to lose weight naturally. I
Yeah.
had, as I was telling you right before we started, I had a patient who threw out her scale, kind of thought she was losing weight because her clothes were getting baggy, but
Mhm.
she didn't know how much she weighed. She wasn't focused on that. She was focused on herself and her life. And she went to the doctor and she told the doctor, I don't want to know what I weigh. Or she told the nurse, I don't want to know what I weigh, weighed her backwards. The doctor came in, looked, looked at her file and said, oh my God, you've lost 60 pounds since you were last here. She had no idea,
Wow.
none. And it was just this organic experience because she profoundly changed how she related to herself and
Yeah.
therefore to food.
Right. And that is like the most important thing. But it's so difficult for, I think, for people to get there or to understand that and to realize that's what's most important. Forget the scale, throw it out, like, focus on yourself. So, that's why we need more people like you out there and, teaching this and working with people like this, because it's just, it's heartbreaking to see people just so focused on the scale. I remember talking to someone not too long ago and she was like, I have to lose 2 more pounds and then I hit my goal. And I'm like, why do you feel like you need to lose 2 more pounds? Like, what is it about the scale? I'm like, she's like, "Oh, well, I'm stronger. I'm working out more. I'm more, I'm more, I have more strength. I have more, I feel more fit." And I said, okay, what on your body bothers you? Nothing. Okay. So why do you need to lose 2 more pounds? Because that's what I weighed when I was my best. And I'm like, do you really feel like that is important? And she was like, when she thought about it, she was like, no, it's really not. But so many people are so focused on that. And it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to break through that.
And it's so sad to me that so many women are focused on what they're eating, and they're at lunch. Not that I've been at a restaurant in a year, but I recall back in the days when we could go to a restaurant looking at you know looking at people next to me, and they're at lunch and they're talking and they're saying, "Oh, I'm going to be good and order this," or, "Ooh, I'm going to be bad and have a sandwich." And then their whole, because I can't help but overhear it because I'm sitting right next to them, their whole meal is they're talking about what they're going to eat and not eat and all of this. And I just want to say, ladies, surely you have more on your mind than what you're eating or not eating. And the other reason I hate the diet culture is it steals your soul. It takes you from you.
Right.
It makes you take energy and think about things that are ultimately, like, I don't want to say not important if it's important to you, but you have other things on your mind. That's why on my radio show, I say, I want you to wake up and think about your day, not your diet. There are
Right.
other things to think about. There are other things to put your energy into other than trying to be smaller. Like, you can take up space
Mhm.
with your mind and your words.
Yeah, I totally
I'm
agree.
passionate about that too.
I totally agree because if they forgot about their weight and being so focused on that, like what could they do in their lives that would be, maybe there's something they are passionate about that they're not even thinking about because all they're thinking about is this scale and the weight and I have to lose weight and blah blah blah. But then there could be all these other things that are, out there for them. They're not even considering because they're so focused on the scale and the weight and all that. And if they let it go and focus on that other thing, they'd probably just lose weight naturally, right?
Yes, yes, nothing. People say, "Oh, when I lose weight, I'll be happy." And I say, "No, when
Never.
you are happy, you will lose weight."
Yeah.
I just want to say one other thing, which is about this notion of self. So many people feel like there's them and then they're against their bodies. And
Yeah.
they don't really see their bodies as themselves. Well, your body is where you live. Your body is you. Your body is not this thing that you're going to whip into shape and needs to be better and all of that. And when you take ownership of that and say, "You know what? No, this is my body and I'm going to care and nurture for my body,"
Right.
becomes easier rather than, "I'm going to whip that body into shape and I'm going to get into whatever shape means,"
Right.
which is like you against your body. Your body is you.
That's true. Totally. And you can do what you like to do. You don't have to go like work out 7 days a week for 3 hours a day and starve yourself. That's not the idea of it. Like you just said, nourish your body and treat it like you would, anybody else, like your kids or your car. You're not gonna go, feed your car some, crap like food or whatever. You're just going to give it the gas that it needs and it's going to run because of it. Your body's the same way. Yeah, that makes sense. So anyway, so if you were to leave listeners with like one single action today, like what would it be?
Hmm. I would say that to remind themselves that there is hope.
Hmm.
That there is hope for a change, that you learned to, so the action would be to remember this, that you learned to create this toxic relationship you have with your body and with food. This is learned behavior. No child comes out of the womb thinking this is something that you learned, and the good news is you can unlearn it and you can find a new way. And as long as you're willing to think differently about yourself and about food and about some of the things that you may have, some of the rules you may have taken as truths, um, that there is hope for change. I've had people in my practice who come into me, they're 70 years old and they've spent their whole life dieting and they don't even imagine that there's a different way out and they leave liberated. So it is never too late and there is always hope.
Yeah, that is a great. I love that. I love that. That's just great advice and makes so much sense. So I know you have a free gift to share. Do you want to describe that a little bit?
Okay, I honestly forget which free gift I was going to give you.
So it's body confidence, diet-free weight loss, and healthy food habits.
It's my webinar. Yes, it's my webinar.
Okay.
So, well, I have two free gifts. Maybe I'll give you both links. One is the first two chapters of my book, The Binge Cure, 7 Steps to
I'm gonna share. I have it. Look,
this one. That's it.
a great book. A great book. I recommend for everyone to watch, to listen to.
And then I also have a webinar that helps you stop emotional eating. So both of them are available. I can make both of them available to your listeners. So.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think that'd be great. And we'll provide all of that in the email, the links for those two things in the email. And can you just share, where can people find you?
They can find me on my website, Dr. Nina Inc., DrNinaInc.com. And from there, you can get access to listening to my show or reading my book. You can also join my free Facebook group. I guess all Facebook groups are free. I say free. You can join my Facebook community, which is Dr. Nina's Food for Thought community. Just do a search and ask to join, and you can join a group of hundreds of really wonderful women from all over the world who get the struggle and are there to support each other. And it's awesome. I love my group.
Yeah.
So you can find me through Dr. Nina Inc. And you can also email me. I answer all my emails personally. So if you have any questions, just let me know.
Okay, awesome. And we'll include all those links in the email as well. So, like I said, we'll include all of those links so that people can find you. And, thank you so much, Dr. Nina, for doing this interview and sharing just like so much great information and so much insight. And, I think it's really helpful for everyone. Do you have any final thoughts?
I just want to, I guess, expand on this idea that, if you weren't thinking about your weight, what would be on your mind? Mm-hmm. There's so much that you could be thinking about, and just be really curious about, well, if I were not thinking about carbs, fat grams, my weight, and all of that, what would I be thinking about? And you will be amazed at what will be on your mind instead of that.
Right. I love that. That's great advice. So I also wanted to remind viewers to, continue to tune in for some more great, upcoming interviews, as I think you'll not only get some great information, but some, great takeaways and insight that you can start implementing right away. I'd also like to encourage you to join my free Facebook group, which is called Weight Loss and Wellness for Life, where I do trainings every week on different topics related to nutrition and health, but you'll also be able to connect with others who are also on a similar journey as you are, or you may be on. So thank you again, Dr. Nina, so much for coming on and sharing your story and giving such great information, such great insight. And thank you everyone for watching. And again, we'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.